as thousands of gallons of oil continue to spew daily from a damaged well in the Gulf of Mexico. Representatives from BP, Transocean, and Halliburton were grilled by lawmakers in back-to-back hearings on Capitol Hill Tuesday. Industry executives from all three corporations began with prepared testimony that involved blaming each other for the explosion and deflecting responsibility for the unfolding environmental and economic disaster. This clip includes Halliburton President and Chief Health, Safety, and Environment Officer Tim Probert, Transocean CEO Stephen Newman, and BP America Chair and President Lamar McKay.
There are really two key sets of questions here, and we're actively exploring both of them. First, what caused the explosion and fire on board Transocean's Deepwater Horizon rig? Second, why did Transocean's blowout preventer, the key fail-safe mechanism, fail to shut in the well and release the rig?
At the outset, I need to emphasize that Halliburton, as a service provider to the well owner, is contractually bound to comply with the well owner's instructions on all matters relating to the performance of all work-related activities.
The one thing we do know is that on the evening of April 20th, there was a sudden, catastrophic failure of the cement, the casing, or both. Without a failure of one of those elements, the explosion could not have occurred. It is also clear that the drill crew had very little, if any, time to react. The initial indications of trouble and the subsequent explosions were almost instantaneous.
That last person, Transocean CEO Stephen Newman. Well, senators accused all three companies of trying to pass the buck and of making disastrously off-base pre-drilling safety assurances. The chair and president of British oil giant BP swore his company would take responsibility for the cleanup and said, quote, "We are prepared to clean up and deal with anything that gets on shore, and we're prepared to deal with the economic impact." Wisconsin Democratic Senator Maria Cantwell, Washington Democratic Senator Maria Cantwell, grilled Lamar McKay about exactly what BP was going to pay for.
It literally was just last year that the last parts of the Exxon Valdez cleanup were settled. I mean, it was a 20-year process, went all the way to the Supreme Court. So, Mr. McKay, are you saying you're going to avoid that by paying legitimate claims in advance? I know you can't stop anybody from suing you, but are you saying you're going to pay legitimate claims in advance of any court process?
We are paying legitimate claims right now, and so yes, I am. And obviously, we can't keep from being sued. But yes, we have said exactly what we mean. We're going to pay the legitimate claims.
Okay, so if it's a legitimate claim, a harm to the fishing industry, both short-term and long-term, you're going to pay?
We're going to pay all legitimate claims.
If it's an impact for business loss from tourism, you're going to pay?
We're going to pay all legitimate claims.
To state and local governments for lost tax revenue, you're going to pay?
Question mark.
Long-term damages to the Louisiana fishing industry and its brand?
I can't quantify or speculate on long-term. I don't know how to define it.
Additional troubles from depleted fisheries to and their recovery?
We're going to pay all legitimate claims.
Shipping impacts?
Legitimate claims.
Impacts on further drilling operations? I'm talking about things now that were part of the Exxon Valdez. So I guess what I'm saying is I think the American people are most anxious about this.
Washington Senator Maria Cantwell questioning BP America Chair Lamar McKay. McKay also assured Oregon Democratic Senator Ron Wyden that BP was changing its practices, but then refused to acknowledge any deficiencies in its operation management systems in the Gulf of Mexico.
This sure fits, in my view, a pattern of serious safety and environmental problems at BP. And the company always says the same thing after one of these accidents: we're going to toughen up our standards, we're going to improve management, we're going to deal with risk, and then another such accident takes place.
We are changing this company. We've put in management systems that are covering the world in a consistent and rigorous way.
Then tell me, if you would, what management systems you put in that would have taken all possible precautions against this kind of problem, because it seems to me I'm hearing about reports of various things that others in the industry are doing, various kinds of computer models and the like that they test. What specifically have you done to put in place changes that reduce the likelihood of these kinds of accidents that BP has a history of being involved in?
Well, I believe our operating management system in the Gulf of Mexico is as good as anyone. I can't point to any deficiencies to point out to you. The investigations are obviously going to be important in terms of if there was something missed. I know of nothing that points me in a direction that we have deficiencies in our operating management system.
That's BP America Chair and President Lamar McKay being questioned by Oregon Senator Wyden. Well, I'm joined right now by Rick Steiner, a marine biologist. For the past week, he's been working at the site of the oil spill and on the Louisiana coast, where he collected several samples of the oil washing ashore. He's a former University of Alaska fisheries extension agent and very familiar with the impact of the Exxon Valdez spill. He just returned to Alaska from the Louisiana coast a couple of hours ago and joins us on the phone from there. Rick Steiner, as you're listening to this testimony for the first time, what are your thoughts as they talk? The chair, CEO of BP America, talks about reimbursing legitimate claims.
Good morning, Amy. Yeah, I just got back here about 2 hours ago to Alaska from the Gulf, and I was glad to hear this questioning in the Senate committees there yesterday. And, of course, BP is playing all of these companies, Transocean, Cameron Industries, the maker of the blowout preventer, Halliburton, and BP are all playing the blame game now. BP has committed several very, very serious environmental crimes over the last 10 to 20 years, a couple of them right here in Alaska that led to major oil spills on the North Slope, the nation's largest oil field. So, whoever the questioner was got it right. Every time there's a breakdown, BP promises that they will change their corporate culture and manage risks better and make a major restructuring within the company so that these things don't happen, and yet they continue to happen. The Texas City refinery blast was another tragic example. And certainly the Deepwater Horizon spill, I mean, if he says he doesn't see anything wrong with their management structure, does he know that the Deepwater Horizon spill has occurred and the rig blew up and sank and they lost 11 workers there? I mean, my goodness.
Rick Steiner, tell us what you found on the coast.
Well, it's tragic, actually. I mean, all these spills that we've worked on around the world, they have their own similarities and differences, but this one's really historic in a number of ways. It's the largest, deepest blowout in history. It's coming out at 5,000 feet deep, as people know, and about 50 miles offshore. And it's a light Gulf of Mexico crude, so it's got some things different than the Exxon Valdez, for instance. When the oil comes out of the wellhead, the blowout, it's emulsifying very quickly with this very dense, high-pressure seawater. And then these things act in complicated ways where then the plume will rise a few hundred meters, and some research has shown that in smaller blowouts in a little bit shallower water, that then the plume will stabilize at a particular depth that will reach a terminal depth and then just start flowing subsurface. So I think the easy way to look at this is that a lot of the oil that's come out still probably hasn't surfaced yet. But even the stuff that has surfaced, it's covering 2,000 to 3,000 square miles in broken patches. I mean, it's not solid, but broken patches. If you use the conservative estimate that BP is putting out and the government apparently is concurring with, then there's 4 to 5 million gallons that have come out so far over the last 3 weeks. And it's a very complicated event. The cause seems like a combination of human error when they withdrew the muds from the well stem and replaced it with seawater before the concrete plugs were in, and thus and then mechanical failure when the blowout preventer failed as well. So the response, the other thing we learned from spills all over the world is that response just simply never works. It never has and likely never will. Seldom is more than 10% that is spilled actually recovered from the sea surface. So they're very proud to say they've got 13,000 workers on this and 400 some boats and, 1 million feet of boom and things like that. But the sad bottom line is they're not going to be able to contain and recover much of the oil